If you would like to access TalkAbility for the visually impaired, please visit our Facebook page.
World Health Organization e bontsha hore dipersente tse 20 tsa batho ba phelang ka mental disorder ba nang le bokgoni ba ho sebetsa ba na le wona mosebetsi. Molao o buang ka reasonable accommodation o ka lehlakoreng la rona. Ka thuso ya melao e teng, ha hona lebaka le thibelang batho ba nang le di-mental disorders hore le bona ba be le mesebetsi e kgotsofatsang. E mong wa batho ba buelletseng reasonable accommodation molemong wa hae le molemong wa batho ba bang ba phelang ka mental disorder o teng le nna mona. Welcome to TalkAbility, Claudia.
Thank you very much for having me.
A few years back, you were diagnosed with bipolar.
Yes.
Can you tell me, how did that manifest in your life as growing up as a young girl? The symptoms, actually.
Okay, so as a young girl, I suffered quite a bit from anxiety, and that was throughout my whole childhood. And then as things were happening in life, I unfortunately lost my father, my grandfather, etc. And it brought about a lot of other feelings and emotions. And through that, and having been hospitalized for first depression and anxiety, they sort of picked up symptoms that were related to bipolar. And from there, I went for my second opinion, and then I was diagnosed with bipolar too.
But before you were diagnosed with bipolar, you were diagnosed with depression and anxiety.
Correct.
And why then that was the diagnosis, and then much later, only then they were able to be accurate and say it's bipolar?
Well, I went through about 2.5 years where I was on different medication to try and sort out what was wrong and what was right and what was working. And I had a lot of depressive episodes, so they tried antidepressants. And then I was also having manic episodes where I was acting quite irrationally and reckless behavior. So then the medicine had to change again. And that was when they picked up my ups and downs.
Okay.
And that's how we got to the bipolar diagnosis.
So actually the medication, it's one of the keys that help to actually have a more accurate diagnosis.
Yes, 100%. Because a lot of, from what I had learned through my own experience, like you said, starting with depression, I was then medicated and obviously went for therapy with those things, but it wasn't just that. There were still other things that was wrong and things that were happening in my life that created my mood swings,
Yes.
which then triggered the bipolar flag.
You were hospitalized twice. And why did you follow that intensive intervention?
Primarily because my daily functioning was completely impaired. I couldn't do your normal BAU. My life was just completely chaotic. So there was no sleep. There was just irregularities left, right, and center. Work was taking a knock. My home life was taking a knock. And through professional assistance, I was pushed, so to speak, to be hospitalized. And then I took that as, look, it's time to be hospitalized and really being looked after and understand what it means.
And the courage to eventually disclose, how did that come about for you?
Well, essentially it was because I went into hospital, so now I had to disclose what was happening because I was going to be away from the office. So I never said what it was because at that stage I still didn't know. All I knew it had something to do with my depressive episodes.
Yes.
And then when I came out, I had to tell them what had happened because I was away for almost 2 months.
And how did you go about the process? Did you tell HR first, or did you tell your direct manager? Or who did you open up to first when you came back?
I actually opened up directly to a colleague of mine who I didn't know her for very long. I was already working there at my company for about 1.5 years before she came and she started, and she just seemed to have this empathetic vibe about her, and she could just see that something was wrong, and she would ask if I was okay, not really knowing what was happening, but she would just show concern.
Yes.
So given that, I built up the courage to tell her. I never went to HR first.
And what was the advice to you when you told
Her advice was that I should open up about it because people don't know what I'm talking about, and I need to explain so that they can better support me. And I understood. I got where she was coming from, but it was hard to come out and say, "Hey, by the way, this is the reality."
You were actually very lucky to have a friend like that.
I was.
Definitely. Ha re shebetsa bophelo ba Claudia, le hore reasonable accommodation mosebetsi wa hae e etsuwe jwang hore e phethahale le hore e kgone ho mo thusa le bipolar ena a nang le yona.
My name is Claudia Sartor, and I have lived experience with bipolar 2 disorder. In 2011, I lost my grandfather, and then in 2012, my father. And that's where then the mood swings started happening. And after which I landed up in hospital, and that's where I was first diagnosed with bipolar 2. People don't understand what it is and what it means to have a mental health condition. The psychologist suggested that my husband come in and actually have a session. I presume that they explained to him what it means for someone to have bipolar, what it means to be a support structure to a family member, and things just slowly started changing. My struggle at work to get reasonable accommodation was to come out about my illness, given that I spent a good, at the time, 3 years at the company without disclosing anything about my illness. So when I landed up in hospital is when I was really forced to come out about the diagnosis. And I was fortunate enough to have an HR lady that was very helpful and very understanding. Because bipolar is so predominantly mood swing based, it becomes very difficult to accommodate. Because things like if you're sitting in an open plan, for example, you've got telephones that are ringing all day. You've got people setting up meetings, rushing across, there's lots of noise. That chemical imbalance can sometimes be affected by stuff like that. If you do speak up, they will help you to get a private room or go and sit in a focus room or maybe a meeting room or go home, work from home. Well, the management to bipolar on a holistic approach, basically you need to have a support system that surrounds you from all angles. So you'll need a colleague from work that you trust. You'll need a friend that you can rely on, as well as your continuous sessions with your therapist. And also the biggest, and I think this is where people fail a lot, is the continuation of taking medication.
From the inset there, it looks like the transition was a bit easy for the company to actually accommodate you.
Yes and no. Because we, being in the financial industry, we hold a lot of confidential information. So to place me in certain areas where there's other people, we would be crossing like information walls and stuff like that. So I had to really convince, because it's an invisible illness, they don't see it. So you need to explain it. So if you have that one person that you can rely on, that person can help you. So she actually would speak to line managers or my fellow peers and be like, listen, she is going into another room, just let it be. So she did a lot of the background talking for me, to be honest, until such time as we were all on the same page.
So this friend has been very important to you.
She has been amazing. She was my support system, still is my support system, and she really helped me. I don't know what I would have done without her.
Well, I'm glad we'll be meeting that friend of yours in a few minutes.
I'm also glad.
Ha re khutla re tla bua ho ngata hape ka bophelo ba Claudia le hore reasonable accommodation o e thotse jwang mosebetsing wa hae le hore mehato a inkileng e thusitse jwang ba bang ba nang le mental disorder. Leeto la Claudia la hore a kgone ho laola bipolar e bile le letelele le le bohloko haholo. Hoduma moo o ile a tlameha hore a be le sebete sa hore a kgone ho hlahisa boemo ba hae mosebetsing hore a tle a kgone ho thola reasonable accommodation. Motswalle wa hae wa mosebetsing e leng Lebohang o teng le yena mona ho tla bua le rona. Yes, people, the friend is here. We've been hearing so much about you. Welcome to the show, Lebohang.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Look, It's so amazing how she speaks about you, and it makes me want to ask you first, are you that type of person, or you just felt that for her only?
You know, I'm surprised myself that she talks about me like this. But I'd like to believe that I am the type of person. But with her also, it was different. It was different because I could see that she needed support. I didn't really at first. I didn't know her story. I didn't know what she was about. But she went to hospital, and after that, then I got to understand that there was something wrong here. When she came back was when she started opening up to me and telling me what was wrong with her, and that's how our friendship started. Really, speaking on her behalf, really, it started. It was a conversation that started between me and her. When she came back, well, while she was in hospital, I was the one who arranged for us to send flowers to her. I kept checking up on her if she was okay. So when she came back, I think we had already started that platform of friendship where she's comfortable to talk to me about anything that was happening. When she's not having a good day, or when she's having one of her episodes, she would come to me and say, "Listen, I'm not feeling okay." So if you see somebody trying, coming to me, or if I approach somebody differently, please just let them know that I'm not okay. So that's how it started. It started off as me just talking to our colleagues and maybe our line manager to say, I spoke to Claudia in the morning and she's not feeling okay, so just be careful while talking to her, or take that into consideration.
Claudia, it appears that you struggled actually to put boundaries.
I did.
And fortunately for you, there was a Lebohang in your life
Correct.
who was your actual boundary,
Yes.
Physically, she was physically the boundary.
No, absolutely. She literally was my boundaries.
And tell us about that. Why is it so difficult to actually put those boundaries yourself?
It's really difficult because you've also got to take into account the personal impact that has on you as a person.
Yes.
And I didn't want to be seen as someone that was not capable of doing her work, and that I can't handle pressure or that now, because it's a mental illness now, that I'm not stable enough, to produce my work efficiently.
For the business unit, Lebohang, what positives do you think came out of Claudia's situation that even improved the working relationship and even improved that power to believe in disclosure, to talk about things, and to be open as colleagues?
I believe her situation assisted a lot of people within our business unit to come out and say, today I'm also not feeling okay, guys. Can I please work from home? Today, this happened in my family. Can I be given time to, deal with that? Because I feel as organizations, or big organizations, need to understand that before you are their employee, you're a person first.
Claudia, if you may share with us
Sure.
some of the incidents that took place, especially on your way to disclosing, on your way to informing and educating everyone through, because there must have been some difficulties as well. It could not have been just a smooth sailing.
Yeah, so it was difficult. What I did is I created a pack of bipolar, what it means, and it's just things off internet, but nicely set out. And I gave it to my bosses, and I asked them to read about it and stuff. And they said that they would, but then I actually remember this very clearly. The following week, I had a really bad day, and I was like, well, if you read what I gave you, you would have understood, where I'm coming from, just face value.
Yes.
But the thing is the business itself is so busy and money orientated and deadline driven that was swept under. So then I had to redo this again. And so for me, it was a few times that had to come out before it sunk in that they need to pay attention.
Yes, of course, when you are not aware of something, or you don't know it and you don't understand it, also the seriousness of attention you give to the situation,
Correct.
is also different.
Yes.
And I think that's what was happening at that time.
Yes.
However, we are glad that they eventually read the pack,
Yes.
eventually listened to you, and
Yes.
started paying more attention and understanding how serious the condition is.
Yes.
Kamra hore Charlene, a fumanwe hore o na le schizophrenia. Bophelo ba hae bo ile ba senyeha. Empa ha ka be a tlohella setjhaba le maqhopo a neng a le kgahlano le yena hore a mo thibelle hore e be sotho se sebetsang hantle setjhabeng. Ha re boneng mona he.
My name is Charlene Zunkel. In 1991, I received a diagnosis of schizophrenia, along with a very daunting prognosis. At some point, I was told that I will never be able to work again, live independently, and basically achieve at anything. My entire life started falling apart, mainly due to unmanaged symptoms, but also due to the negative prediction of where my life was heading towards. I was dismissed from work due to medical grounds, and I also suffered damaged relationships with family as well as friends. I ended up spending a total of 4 years in psychiatric hospitals, until I decided that I still have fight left in me, and I also have some kind of rebellious streak. So whatever I was said to be not be capable of, I went against that. My experiences basically led me to pick myself up and started a career in the mental health field, where I started off doing volunteer work to where I am today, the CEO of the Global Mental Health Peer Network. Mental health conditions affect a person's entire life. It's not only a health issue, but probably the workplace is the one area of a person's life with psychosocial disability that actually infringe mostly on their human rights. What we often see is that people with psychosocial disabilities in the workplace are often being bullied. They also experience unfair discrimination and unfair dismissals. With schizophrenia, they often bear the worst brunt of stigma and discrimination. People seem to believe that you are dangerous, that you're incapable of kind of managing or maintaining a conversation, to live on your own, to be independent, make your own decisions. And these really impact so much on a person and their ability to function daily, from day to day. I'm living proof that people diagnosed with schizophrenia can live a normal, functional life and have a successful career in life.
Well, Charlene shows us that when you have a mental condition or mental disorder, you need to own it. It needs to become you, because that's who you are at the end of the day. And in order for others to be able to also understand, and for others to actually then move on with you, because if you don't own it, then there's no moving on for both parties either way. And for you, what is the important point that you were able to take from what Charlene was talking about?
Well, what Charlene mentioned, that the fact that we're not incapable of doing things, and that we get bullied a lot about that. What I would take from that is when I was in hospital, right, I saw the professionals really going out of their way to help me in this multidisciplinary field, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a career of it. And that's what Charlene did as well. She made a career of her schizophrenia and her lived experience with that, and that's what I've done. So that's where my mental health advocacy comes in. I've been to Dubai and Portugal this year to speak about this type of stuff, and I also then studied psychology to understand even more about what it means to have a mental health condition.
It's actually very important, because it goes to show that what we see as something that is a disadvantage or something that is terrible, there's many opportunities that can come out of it. And I think that's what you've done with your condition, and you keep on doing with it. And also something positive has also given Lebohang an open mind, education, where she's also able to assist other people when she sees that there's differential treatment somewhere about a particular person. She's able to teach, say, no, there's nothing really wrong with this person. There's so much that this person can still do if we support them properly. And that is just lovely to see that your relationship has transpired into actually growing another person, A re tla bua le Nika Oberholster a sebetsang ka taba tsena tse malebana le accessible workplaces, le ho utlwisisa hore ditokelo tsa batho ba nang le mental disorder tsona di reng. Re ntse re bua ka reasonable accommodation mosebetsing bakeng sa batho ba nang le mental disorders. Jwale re kenyeletsa Nika Oberholster, e leng occupational therapist e sebetsang haholo ka reasonable accommodation mesebetsing malebana le batho ba nang le psychosocial disorders. Welcome to the show, Nika.
Thank you for having me.
Nika, please tell me, what is so different between actually requesting a reasonable accommodation for a person that has mental disorders compared to a person with a physical disability?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that there shouldn't be any difference in the way psychosocial disability is treated in the workplace as opposed to physical disability. I think where the difficulty come in is that employers think it's easier for them to come up with something to help a person with a physical disability with, and they're stumped when you say, I have a mental illness, I need accommodation, and they don't actually know where to start. So I think the best thing for an employer would be then to gather information and consult with an occupational therapist.
Lebohang, yourselves actually took it upon yourselves to push it forward, to try to have the disclosure taking place and to show support as a business unit. How did you guys reach that level?
All right, so for us, it was just to make our colleague comfortable. It was to help her get through the day. It was to help her be productive, basically. So that was the motive behind us pushing forward or making people aware, making her stakeholders aware of her condition. It was just to make her comfortable, to make her be able to produce what she's supposed to do.
How do you start the process to actually then disclose to HR and the understanding of the privacy rights? How do you apply them within the working space?
I suggest that all employees who want to disclose to HR, let HR sign a non-disclosure agreement and a confidentiality agreement to protect you, and you can stipulate in there. So as part of the reasonable accommodation agreement, you say, I am going to disclose to you, this is my diagnosis, this is what I'm going to need from you, and do you understand that you may not disclose any of this to anybody without my written consent?
Correct.
And the culture of inclusion should come from the top. For me, when I think of inclusion, I think of it's woven into the fabric of the company. And I strongly believe other staff needs to be educated at all times. It shouldn't even be an issue if you take into account the fact that 1 in 4 people suffer from mental illness.
From your experience actually with Claudia, what are the things that you were able to pick up about her condition specifically and that you understand yourself?
Honestly, I've never been exposed to bipolar before her. So I only even got to understand what it was. I mean, obviously the term I know, but I didn't know what it entails. I didn't know what a person with bipolar goes through, the symptoms, just a typical day for a person with bipolar. So having met Claudia and being very close with her, working with her, I got to see it firsthand.
I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen with the man in the street, staff and the employers to protect everybody.
I think the ironic thing here is when I went to hospital, and this is just a quick little story, but when I walked out of the lifts to go to my room, there was this girl that came running across and she had a pizza box and she was running across and the nurse was shouting at her. And I actually went, so my husband was with me as well as my mother-in-law. And I was like, no, I don't belong here. This is crazy. I'm not a crazy person. I had already self-stigmatized myself. At that very moment, I had already said, I don't belong here. Why? Why did I say that? Because so much has had happened.
Your reasoning was crazy to show that
Correct.
you've already stigmatized
I stigmatized myself as crazy. I'm not crazy. And, okay, so long story short, my husband made me stay. He was like, you need the help. Before you can go back into the big, bad world, there is no health without mental health.
Exactly.
And that's something that I always emphasize. And another thing is leaving no one behind.
And I think South Africa should really start investing in exploring the supported employment principles that has been very successful internationally. So the support and employment principle, there are 8 principles, but one of the main ones is zero exclusion. So anyone with a disability can work.
Looks like there's a lot that we still need to explore, a lot that we still need to develop. But I think one of the things that still need to happen in this future is to actually look into this type of different of employments and see how the different disabilities affect or are affected by the different types of employment. And thank you guys for coming to the show.
Thank you very
we've
much.
thoroughly enjoyed having you here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Great stuff.
Always a pleasure.
Yes. Ipeng matla emelang tokelo tsa lona le hopole hore reasonable accommodation eo e kenyeletsang mosebetsing wa hao e tla thusa ba bangata ba tlang ka morao. Bua le rona mane ho social media. Lebitso nna ke Reina Moloi, and we talk ability.